Yeah, actually, that actually sets us up perfectly for, because I think there's risk in internal development, there's risk in the smaller providers of apps. They're essentially the same exact thing. And so, Steve, I'll start with you on this one. Is how do I'm asking even a personal question. How do I manage the risk of a developer leaving? This could be at a contract and say, hell, this is internal for us. How do I balance the risk of a developer leaving that's kind of custom built these applications and we're depending on these as a company? With how do we do that? How do they know how to use, update, or fix their code?
Boy, that's a big question. So I think, one of the first methods of managing the risk of a developer leaving is, the human resources side, keeping them happy. And obviously it's just like keeping other employees happy. But if you have a toxic workplace, if you have an environment that's not very friendly to employees and you have a high turnover, I would be, nothing's going to be different in your system development team, right? So that's one thing. If you already have a very healthy organization and a healthy team, I think one of the keys is to take almost a internal open source approach, right? You're not sharing everything with everybody across the world, but fostering a culture of sharing and teaching internal to the team really, I think, manages that very well. Because if, say, you have a sole developer leave, but the whole team knows A, the workflow, B, the process, C, what they were working on, the code generally, this is a real generalization, but the code generally is pretty easy for another developer to understand if they have all of it, and if they have a support network within the organization to go explain some of the business decisions a developer has made, right? One of the worst things for me is going backwards and looking at somebody else's work and not knowing any of the constraints of the decisions that they made at the time. It's really easy to come into a development job and be super duper critical of, oh, why did this guy do this here? Or why did they do that there? And I can't believe this works, blah, 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 without knowing, what happened behind the scenes, what different constraints. So then on the, how to maintain some of those, great documentation, and not code documentation. Generally, if you're following good code practices, it should be self-documenting, not plugged up with a ton of comments, but, comments in critical areas and built in such a way that people can intuit what it means. But then great process documentation really goes a long way on explaining what the software does, right? So another developer can step in. And honestly, I think the one thing is to not give the software developer all the keys to the kingdom and allow them to lord over them, if you will. If you see the signs of that coming, curb it before maybe it turns into a problem.
Right. I equate it to almost like the management of a job site. You can walk onto a job site and get a feel for how that job is being managed in the organization that's there. And so for a software development team in a construction company, probably would make it's a logical parallel to say, okay, so you got an ACtBox or a Connex that's out there and it's organized and things are where they need to be, and everybody knows where to go get supplies, where the tools should be. They don't just leave them all over the place, right? As gee, this tradesman just leaves his tools all out, this one puts them away. There's got to be some organizational methodology for the software development team so that their code is in one place. They meet regularly as a team to talk about, here's how code should be documented so that we can, read the comments in the code and people can get a feel for how it's been developed, how their database methodology is going to be driven. So those are things that can, I think, reduce the risk of just one software developer leaving a team, right? Certainly doesn't get us away from the one software developer shop, which there's quite a few of them that are out there. And yeah, you would probably want to make sure that person is engaged, feeling like they're contributing, and then you should be looking as you continue to grow your company of how you break that out into multiple people so that you can minimize your risk.
I think, and this just came in as a question from someone in the audience. Normally we'll take a lot of these at the end, but I think it really applies here. And, Steve, you talked about making sure there was a good culture and everything inside the company for the developer, right? And that's really, really important. I have a feeling you're going to want to talk to me afterwards. But wow, he didn't even laugh, Chris. Now I'm actually doubly worried.
Oh, I'm laughing.
Oh wait, why did my email just stop working? But I think the other element though is looking for, and we run into this a lot as we're helping contractors kind of evolve their systems development team and going from maybe that one developer into to actually developing a systems development team. And that includes helping them learn how to manage some of these risks, like good code repository practices and cross-training and things like that, which are kind of frustrating, but sometimes it's just good to have some outside advisory on that. And one of the things that I see a lot that is cultural on the other side of it, right, is that developer, and you said give them the keys to the kingdom and let them lord over it. I see that in IT people all the time. I mean, they are worse than electricians when it comes to thinking, to having kind of that God complex. How do you go protect against that, I guess, both from a cultural standpoint of hiring the right fit? Because to me, they should just be totally open, right? Like a really good electrician marks all their conduit. They mark all their circuits. They make everything up. They update their plans with the as-built so that somebody else could come in right behind them and easily be able to troubleshoot and figure out what's going on. But there are some that kind of lord over their building or buildings like you're talking about. So dive deeper into that, if you would, Steve, on just how do I get guys like you, and not some that are in that other category?
I think so. So there's a little bit to it, right? Because I think especially IT, and putting on my IT hat, I balance in terms of. I'm a little bit more conservative, but I also like new shiny, right? So one of the things, if most IT folk, because they have to keep dial tone running, they have to keep the electricity on the technology systems, they're generally very conservative. So that conservative mindset also leads to not wanting to give up the keys. I think one of the best ways to, I won't say curb it, but open their eyes, is to really integrate them into the organization. So they are really familiar with who their end customer is, who your organization's customers are, and what kind of their zoomed out role is, right? That they're not just providing servers for the ops team, and they're not just providing, Ethernet setups in the cubicles for the accounting team, or, it's like once you kind of zoom out past the day-to-day tasks, I think a lot of that really just goes away. And same when you're hiring, right? If you can hire for a larger vision, it seems like most of the IT management and the IT teams that come from, thinking a little bit outside themselves, they just don't have that. Or, the other thing is truly being open back. If you as an organization only give them the minimum amount of information required and, you're very closed, it fosters that, well, finance won't ever talk to me, so I'm going to keep this for me. So that goes into having a kind of healthy organization overall.
Yeah, Steve, I couldn't
really
agree.
good point.
I couldn't. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Having the software development team understand what they do every day and how that contributes to the overall success of the organization, I agree, is a critically important part of that. Right? They need to know that what they're doing isn't just fixing widgets. It's actually helping the company grow. So.
And that really ties back to the agile management practices as well, because that forces the communication on a regular basis.
Yeah, absolutely. So